for the first 20 years of my sexual life. It was constantly shadowed by, is this going to be the time that you're going to get HIV? Is this going to be the time that you have to pay for it? Once I started using PrEP, the fear started lifting. But then I realized when I wasn't worried about HIV so much, I had so much more mental time and energy and resources to devote to other things in my life. Sexual health is a conduit for mental health and empowerment and peace of mind and pleasure in so many other areas of one's life.
Hello and welcome to Power Beyond Pride, a weekly queer change-making podcast bringing you voices and ideas from across our fierce and fabulous spectrum to transform our world. I'm Kate, queer high femme in residence.
And I'm Mattie, the hostess with the mostest, and we are here tonight to be your co-host and Clear Cash Journey Guide. That's who we are, yes. And in this episode, we are talking to the most beautiful, attractive Damon Jacobs, a New York-based marriage and family therapist best known for championing PrEP and sexual health activism in the New York Times, MSNBC, ABC News, and other media sources.
Damon interviews other sexual health activists and healers naked in his bathtub on his award-winning series, Tub Talks with Damon. And actually, our executive producer, Shane Lucas, was in one of those tubs too. And you were recently honored to receive a Commissioner Special Recognition Award through the New York State Department of Health in 2016. Congratulations and welcome.
Thank you. I'm so glad to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
We're very excited to have you. How are you doing tonight?
I'm doing great. It is such a difficult time, I think, in our country. There's so many things going on that we don't control. And yet there are so many things in the realm of sexual health and science that we do control. So I cannot wait to get into these things with the two of you to talk more about them.
Most definitely, most definitely. Well, as we get started, what's going on in the New York area? What's popping? What's crack-a-lacking up there?
Yesterday was my 20-year anniversary of moving to New York City. And it is probably one of the smartest and nicest things I've ever done for myself. Especially now, there is a safety, even though there's a lot of chaos around here, there's also a lot of safety to being here. And there's a part of my body that just relaxes when I'm in New York City that feels inspired and invigorated here in a way that I feel no other place in the world. But we've definitely had our challenges in New York City. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. No, I definitely understand that. But that's wonderful because when I think of New York City, I don't think a lot of times of safety first and foremost. So to know that is something that you feel, I love it. I love it.
I spent 10 years in New York, and I feel like there's always that question of like, do you become a New Yorker? When do you become a New Yorker? And I feel like it's the moment where you travel, you get back to the utter chaos of New York City at 11:30 p.m., and you just breathe a sigh of relief and your whole body react.
That is a great way to put it. When you like where you're coming home to, that's a good sign this is your home. And I feel that way, Katie, every time. Yeah. Yeah.
So, Damon, I do want to jump right on in. You have a very powerful story from everything that you've done, from PrEP work and the Naked Talk show on the Tub Talk online, which like I told you before, I'm coming to sit in the tub. I promise you, I am coming to sit with you. But can you give some of the people who may not know that much about you, like give us a little synopsis of how you got to where you are today?
Absolutely. Thank you, Mattie. So I am 54 years old now, and I grew up and came out in the 1980s, figured out that I was gay at a time when doing so was tantamount to possible death and disease and trauma. I came out seeing Rock Hudson and many of our brothers and sisters exploited by the media who were dying of AIDS, thinking if you ever were to have sex with a man, that would be you next. And so coming out and growing up in a time knowing that my desire was tantamount possibly to death was a rough time. I have always been interested in mental health. I've always pursued mental health as a career and a focus of education, but I've always been a sexual person as well, interested in sexual health. And then coming out as gay and realizing by the time I came out in the late 80s, early 90s, there were ways to have sex, a lot of pleasurable sex, and prevent HIV at the same time. And that there were ways that I could learn about that and ways I could talk about that with my peers and with my future clients so that we could have the maximal amount of pleasure with the minimal amount of risk. And it was important for me to sort of bridge that divide between mental health and sexual health, because I realized early on that when you have access to one, you have a lot more access to the other. and that these
That's
were
true.
both important, meaningful parts of the human experience that we are meant to have on this earth.
I definitely get that. I understand that.
And I would love what you just said, I think is really important and often kind of sets you apart. So you approach this as both mental health and sexual health. And we know how many times someone says sexual health and what they mean is condoms. And the way you talk about it, even the way you told your story, the way we talk about our coming out story, often sometimes those are like really rooted in trauma. And when sexuality should be rooted in pleasure and joy. And so, can you share a little bit more about how and why mental health and sexual health are so important to be linked together and how that shows up for you?
Absolutely. Because I feel like these are often such compartmentalized areas. Like being educated and trained in mental health in this country usually means you are being separated and compartmentalized from the social issues that affect our lives. So, from the homophobia, the racism, transphobia, misogyny that informs many of our daily lived experiences and the traumas that we face is usually kind of seen as other by the mental health profession, at least in the United States. It's like, no, we're going to talk about this disorder. We're going to talk about major depressive disorder, the distinguishers. We're going to talk about post traumatic stress disorder. We're going to talk about whatever diagnoses and disorders are popular in a given day. And every few years, they do switch around. But the basis for that is a 900-page manual called the Diagnostic Statistical Manual, which I got some issues with. I could get into that. I call it the Drug Selling Manifesto, the DSM, because
Hello.
it's largely written by people who work for pharmaceutical companies, and they're not completely objective nor free of financial burdens when they write these criteria. So that's a problem. And again, that in and of itself is a problem, the incentive model of diagnosing disorders, but also that it is primarily seen as an insular, internal thing that we are taught to treat in the mental health world. Meanwhile, on the activist side, on the political side, on the sexual health side, I've been very involved in going to marches, parades, protests, all the things, right? And that is often compartmentalized from the mental health standpoint. It's the idea that we need to keep fighting for rights and dignities, which are, yes, very important. Vaccines, condoms, cures, PrEP, all the ways that we can promote sexual health. But that is the goal, is to keep changing the external. And this has always been one of my criticisms of the HRC, the Human Rights Commission, is that everything is about the external. So for a long time, it was about fighting back against HIV. They were also like fighting to make like gay people who can serve in the military. And then they were fighting for marriage equality. Okay, fine. All well and good, I guess. But there was never, ever a focus on the rights and the privileges of maintaining and sustaining mental health through the lifetime. And if we don't have mental health, all these other things often are not as rewarding and meaningful. So in my world, there has to be a way to bridge that. There has to be a way to, in tandem, work with mental health, sexual health at the same time, to have these different things in the external realm and the internal realm come together in a way that really makes life even more possible, pleasurable, and meaningful than it would have been otherwise. I actually wrote a book about this called Absolutely Shouldless. It's about challenging and changing the word should in your life. Realizing that in the mental health field, they're never going to touch the political issues with a 10-foot pole. The political issues, they're not going to talk about the mental health issues with a 10-foot pole. Absolutely Shouldless was my attempt to bridge the personal and the political and say, if we challenge and change the shoulds in our personal lives and in the macro world, we can have a lifetime that is more satisfying, more meaningful. We can have better sex, better relationships, better health all around.
Do you feel like there's more of a peace when you finally accept and explore into your sexuality and realizing that it's because it's funny how people think sexuality is just about sex and it's not. And so when you actually explore into your sexuality and loving your body and everything else, do you find that there's more peace and centeredness in that?
Absolutely, Mattie. That has been my experience. And I'll tell you this, I didn't even know that until about 14 years ago when I started using PrEP. So I told you I came out in the 1980s, discovered bottoming really fast as a way that I love to have sex. And it was great, but it was constantly overshadowed by fear for the first 20 years of my sexual life, pretty much from age 19 through 40. It was constantly shadowed by, is this going to be the time that you're going to get HIV? Is this going to be the time that you have to pay for it? Is this going to be the time something's going to go wrong? And that you always carry that what if? And I didn't know because I never lived without it. I didn't know how much that was impacting and preventing from experiencing full joy, relaxation, and connection in sex and then in other parts of my life. Once I started using PrEP, which was July 2011, the fear started lifting and I started to be able to enjoy sex, connecting, and just general, can I say at the F word, fucking without fear, which made a huge difference, not only in my sex life, I mean, because that was great, but then I realized when I wasn't worried about HIV so much, I had so much more mental time and energy and resources to devote to other things in my life. There were other things to think about. There were other ways to channel that nervous energy that I had been using to try to prevent HIV. So one of the things I did was start my private practice in New York City. I'm sitting in it right now as I'm talking with you. I built my psychotherapy practice and I started finding ways at the time to use Facebook to communicate about the efficacy and the power and the empowerment of using PrEP to prevent HIV around the world, and created a resource that's still there today called PrEP Facts: Rethinking HIV Prevention and Sex, so that anybody around the world who has a wide connection could learn the science, the data, the facts about PrEP and understand how to make that work for them in their life if they choose to do so. I did not have the time or the faculties or the energy or the focus to do that when I was really constantly worrying about HIV all the time. So yeah, Mattie, is so much more than just sexual health. Sexual health is relevant and is meaningful, but we've also seen that sexual health is a conduit for mental health and empowerment and peace of mind and pleasure in so many other areas of one's life.
Before we go to break, I do want to ask another question. Can you explain what
Yeah.
PrEP is, first off?
Oh, yes, I would love to. So PrEP is a daily pill that I use to prevent HIV. It's similar in principle to a birth control pill that someone would take in order to be able to have the kind of sex they want to have and not get pregnant. It is the same principle. It's a very different pill, but the principle is the same for those of us using PrEP to enjoy sex without condoms, without having to worry about HIV being one of the variables. Now, today, there's also an FDA-approved injectable method that allows people to get a shot. Instead of taking a pill every day, they could get a shot that lasts for 8 weeks. And by the time this airs, it's quite likely and probable that there will be another shot, because it's coming in June of 2025, that there will be another shot approved by the FDA, which is actually going to be a 6-month shot. So
Ooh, okay.
PrEP refers to like an umbrella of interventions, of ways that people can prevent HIV to their particular preference, whether it's a pill or a shot.
Okay.
And
Cool.
the medical term is pre-exposure prophylaxis. But for me and for so many of the sluts who take PrEP, we say it stands for proactive, responsible, empowered pleasure. Proactive, because it's done ahead of time. Responsible, because I'm protecting HIV from my body and the bodies of my partners. It's empowered, because I get to, for the first time in my life as a bottom, I get to decide to stay HIV negative. It is completely in my power to do so. And P is the pleasure, because having sex without fear is really pleasurable. PrEP. PrEP.
I like that. I like that. Well, as we go to break, people, I need y'all to understand PrEP is a very important thing, and be prepared for anything in life. And don't go anywhere, because we will be right back with the beautiful, sexy. Y'all can't see him, but I'm going to tell you, this man is sexy. You said you were how old again?
54.
Okay, y'all, he look every bit 45, if not 24. Okay, I need y'all to understand, sexy. So PrEP is doing more than just keeping you safe. It's keeping you looking young. We'll be right back with Power Beyond Pride, all right?
Welcome back. This is Power Beyond Pride, a queer change-making podcast, and I'm Kate, here with my co-host Mattie, talking with the absolutely amazing Damon Jacobs.
So, Damon, your approach to sexual health activism, I know you had told the story about how you got started, but what has, I guess, fueled your passion for it? Like, what's the underlying current?
The underlying current for my passion for activism for now 33 years it's very personal, and it's really rooted in pain and grief and trauma. You know, I was, again, 18, 19 when I came out, and that means I was 18, 19 when my friends started dying. And at the time it was like weirdly normal. And now I look back on that and I'm like, God, that's not normal. That's not okay. But that was a part of being gay and being in San Francisco in the 1990s was that I worked on Castro Street. I lived down in the Mission, and knowing people with AIDS made you lost people with AIDS, working with people with AIDS made you lost people with AIDS, loving people with AIDS, having sex with people with AIDS, having roommates with people with AIDS, having clients and supervisors with AIDS made you lost people. And I lost a lot of people. And they would be here and probably doing a better job of this than I am if they were here, because I've lost some really amazing people, but they're not here, but they are here because I speak with them. I don't speak for them, but I speak with them. They're with me constantly. They are with me when I do these interviews or when I'm speaking or teaching somewhere about PrEP or sexual health and empowerment. I literally can channel some of the voices of the loved ones who I've lost. And that really keeps me going. That keeps me motivated. It is a very personal thing that I don't want anyone of any age to have to go through losing their friend, but especially not young people, and especially not today when HIV and AIDS is so preventable.
And with that history, like you have named some really powerful moments in not only your life, but really in the development of this conversation. What are some of the things that you see have really changed in the sexual health conversation? Like now we have PrEP, now we talk about it differently. And it's also that challenge of no, HIV is still around and it's still a thing, even though we might be talking about it less. I would love to know, like, how have you seen these conversations progress? And do you think they've been progressing in the right way, honestly?
I think they're progressing in the right way, but the results are not happening quick enough. And what I mean by that is that the conversations are changing. The science has drastically changed the conversation. When I started talking about PrEP 13, 14 years ago, it seemed that within the HIV and within the gay community, there was still a backlash. I was still being called a Travada whore. I'm wearing a t-shirt that says Travada whore because that was a stigma that was assigned to me and to anyone who was using PrEP at the time. It was intended to shame us and hurt our feelings and try to make us feel bad about being sexual people. That was really the backlash that was indicative of a sex negative culture, but it was sex negative because we live in a Puritan world, but also because that was based in real lived trauma from people like myself who survived the AIDS crisis. And many people who survived the AIDS crisis are still today carrying the wounds that are really sharp from what it's like to feel completely helpless when you are burying your brothers and sisters. It's very painful. And so a lot of people responded to PrEP as if like, oh, you're introducing this new wave of death and pain. And if people have sex without condoms, everyone's going to die. And it's going to be as bad as it was in the 80s. And of course, we've seen the science hold up under scrutiny. And that has not been the case. PrEP has not led to a wave of new HIV transmissions. Consequently, I feel like the culture around this in many parts of the US have changed. It is no longer considered normal to have a backlash, to have a stigma, to have a name-calling, slut-shaming reaction to people using PrEP, at least not within the gay male community in most parts of the US. I think women, and I think women in the South, are still getting that slut-shaming, religious-based Puritan shame, but that's also the case for birth control. It's still this should against women who are sexually active and empowered in many parts of this country, not just in the South. But as far as the shifts in HIV conversations, I think PrEP has really ushered in a different kind of conversation. And within my profession has reduced the compartmentalization between our personal lives and the respectability politics. My bathtub is a great example of that because I don't think I could have done a show like this just first within myself, with my own confidence. I didn't even have the confidence to sit naked in a bathtub with people until I was in my 50s. But then for other people to agree to do this, people who are CEOs of nonprofits, people who have worked with President Obama, people who have done or are still doing very prestigious work, now have the acceptability of saying, I can be professional and I can do amazing work that helps people, and I can still have a naked conversation in a bathtub talking about my decision to use PrEP. So those barriers have been lessened. And I think that's a very exciting change that has taken place. I'm very glad that has taken place. The other things that have contributed to that is the science and the message behind U equals U. What that means is the understanding medically and scientifically that when someone's living with HIV and they're taking their medications and undetectable, they cannot possibly transmit HIV in a sexual situation. There is no way to transmit HIV when someone is undetectable through sex at all. That also made a huge difference worldwide in terms of how we have these conversations and reduce the stigma about pleasurable fucking. And now the latest thing, like the latest amazing, cool thing is that we also have a significant way of preventing STIs that has never, ever existed in the history of humanity ever before. And I could talk more about that. But what we do is when we put all these things together, we put PrEP, U equals U, and doxycycline to prevent STIs, and boom, we have a sexual revolution that has never existed in this world before. So that part has changed. The part that hasn't changed is the barriers to treatment, the barriers to testing, the barriers to non-stigmatic medical care, especially in the 9 states of the Southeast where HIV prevalence is the highest.
And I'm glad you brought that up because that was my next thing I wanted to go to. And correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm glad we have you here. Living in the Southeast, growing up rooted in the Bible Belt, seeing it all, hearing it all, and knowing that I was living an alternative lifestyle as a child, or as they like to call it, alternative lifestyle, which I come to realize my life is my life, whatever. But growing up hearing certain things that was kind of sort of I remember when I came out to my cousin, that was something my cousin said to me and was like, oh my God, like, I'm happy that you're living your life, but I just don't want you to die. And I was like, what do you mean? And he was like, well, you're going to get AIDS. And I'm like, well, why is that something that has to happen? So my question is, do you think we'll ever come a time where the advertisement for PrEP, the research for PrEP won't just be centered around the minority community, that it will encompass everybody else? Because like when you see the commercials for PrEP, it's normally targeting towards minority communities. Like you don't see a lot of representations of women. You don't see a lot of representations of Caucasian women or Caucasian men. You see it more of Black gay men in the advertisements, and which I love it. But at the same time, like you said, there's women that suffer from HIV, that there's more people than just that group of people. Does that make sense?
It does. And when we get into that, we sort of start to get into sort of the political, pharmaceutical weeds of, and what has been problematic from the pharmaceutical standpoint about how they're advertising and to whom they're advertising. Descovy is the only the only PrEP drug in the current US that's on brand for the pill. What that means is Truvada is generic. So I can buy a generic version of Truvada, which is what I use, and it costs very little, or through my insurance, it's completely free. Descovy is still being produced solely in the United States by a pharmaceutical company called Gilead. And Gilead is first and foremost a corporation, and they have a business, and they're selling a product. The problem is when Gilead did their research to fast track Descovy as a way to prevent HIV for PrEP, what they didn't ever do was include cisgender women in any of the research trials that would show whether or not Descovy works or how well it works in women assigned female at birth. Because they skipped over that step, the FDA said, okay, you tested it on the sluts. Great. It's going to work for gay men and transgender women, so we're going to give you a pass for that because you did your due diligence, but you never actually tested it on these other groups. And because you never tested it on these groups, we're not going to give you approval. We're not going to say it's safe for people assigned female at birth to use if you never tested it. So Descovy is not approved for women in the United States. And because of that, they can't market to women in the United States. No, it's not. Truvada was, but Descovy is not.
Right.
Now, the injectables are. The injectables were tested and they are approved. And I think some of the marketing has reflected that. But again, these are, and I can't speak for any of their business practices, but I think they're trying to go for the groups of people they perceive to be their greatest market. And they're also using some of the data that we have that at this moment, at least in the US, the 9 states of the Southeast that young men of color, Black men of color between the ages of 13 and 26, I believe, are the highest prevalence testing newly positive. So they're kind of like zeroing in on that group.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not saying I agree with it. I'm just saying that is where I think their logic goes.
No, but that makes sense.
Yeah, I think what makes sense is I'm really more of a fan of local marketing than corporate national marketing. So I do think it's
Mm-hmm.
good to see these advertisements like during the Rachel Maddow show, and that's pretty cool. But I think what really makes sense is when there's money and time given to community effort. So for people, like people, you live in a community, you know your community, you know the people in your community, you know their needs, their hopes, their wants. You have a better idea how to market on a budget to people in your community than anyone at Gilead could ever know.
Mm-hmm.
It would be smart. And sometimes what they do is give funds to local organizations to say, you know your community better than we do. We trust you with this money to put out the message that is most appropriate and syntonic with the community so that people will actually listen and feel like respected by the messaging.
Yes.
Because you can do that better than somebody in a corporate boardroom in Silicon Valley.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, I always wondered that because that was something that me and some of my friends, when we would see the commercials, we'd be like, oh, I love that they're putting information out there, but it's just, okay, well, there's more than just Black gay men that deal with this issue.
Yep.
So I'd love to pivot us a little bit and ask another question. And one of the things I also really love about how you talk about sexual health is that it is holistic and it's big. And in that way, you also talk about things like kink and poly and the importance of those. So first and foremost, when you say kink and poly, what does that mean to you?
So that's such a great question because there is so much, it's so ubiquitous, right? We use these terms, we throw these terms around. And so eventually, if everyone has their own idea of what these things are, how are they even meaningful anymore if everyone's talking about something different? I don't really know if I quantify desire and sex and pleasure into kink or vanilla because I could tell you I love bottoming and I love bottoming for multiple partners often at the same time and love cum loads. Now, for some people, that is kinky. For some people, that's like the most vanilla Sunday they could ever have. And which is really in the eye of the beholder or the pee holder. I don't know. So it's hard. I, I think instead of getting bogged down by quantifiable categories, my question as a provider is what makes you feel good? What kind of sex do you enjoy? And is there, based on my information, is there anything that I can contribute or to your experience of information empowerment? Is there anything that I can add to that? So it's not about what I want or what I think you should be doing, because I don't believe in shoulds. But I ask, what are your hopes? What are your dreams? What's your ideal sex life? And how can you pursue that in a way that maximizes the pleasure and minimizes whatever potential risk might be there? And so if we're talking about a certain specific kind, like fisting, something that can be wonderfully pleasurable, but may also have some inherent risks as far as nails, as far as cuts, as far as one's gastrointestinal system, that we'll talk about ways to support you in pursuing your joy and your desire and your pleasure that also will provide protection for you from anything that could possibly go wrong, knowing we can't always predict everything that's going to go possibly wrong. But that would be, again, less attachment to the word kink, more about pleasure or what you want or how you find the way to say yes to your yes, no to your no, to your baby.
Well, right now I'm feeling yes, no, and maybe at the same time. So, that works for me.
All right.
But I will say this, Kate, yes, we have to go to break.
Okay.
No, we are not leaving. We are coming back. And maybe if people stay around and listen, they'll know why we're about to get naked in the tub with Damon. How about that? What do you think? We'll be right back.
Welcome back. This is Power Beyond Pride, a queer change-making podcast, and I'm Kate here with my co-host Mattie, talking with the incredible Damon Jacobs.
Now, Damon, let's get into the main conversation that I've been wanting to have all night. How and when can I get naked and in I'm not the hotel, but the tub with you? But no, seriously, can you tell us a little bit about your show?
Absolutely. And Mattie, when you're in Brooklyn or I'm in your area, we're going to do this. Absolutely. We're going to do this. So I turned 50 in 2021 and wrote a series of essays called The 50 Lessons of 50, how I'm learning to get older with power, purpose, and pleasure. And just like, I felt so excited and grateful to be turning 50, especially in context of everything I said earlier about how many people I know didn't get to turn 50. So I really wanted to celebrate that. And this was still during COVID, or kind of like at the edge or the beginning of being able to get vaccines. And everybody was kind of on this uncertain ground. Everybody was a little bit confused about what this meant socially, how well these vaccines worked. Does this mean we could go back to socializing? Where? How? Nobody knew exactly what was going on. And so I felt so excited about turning 50. And I also thought, okay, once I wrote my 50 Lessons of 50, I have talked enough, I have babbled enough. Now I want to hear how other people are thinking about getting older in healthy ways, with body positivity, with sex positivity in this pandemic that's still, are we at the end? Are we in the middle? Like, we just didn't know. Like, we didn't know what was going on. So I thought, okay, I have always enjoyed interviewing people. I am a very nosy person. I'm a very curious person. And I've also always in my personal life felt very comfortable having meaningful, deep conversations with people when they're naked. And it always just felt like people are so much more honest and open and vulnerable when they're naked.
I mean, they're naked, so that's the vulnerability.
It is
Yeah.
vulnerable and it's hard to be guarded, or as I say, it's really hard to hold a grudge against someone you're sitting in a bathtub naked with. I wish more world leaders would sit in bathtubs. And anyway, so I decided, okay, I'm in
Oh,
New York
that's
City.
not an image. That's
You
not
don't
an
want
image.
to.
I don't want to imagine our current person naked. And no, that's not an image I
They
want
wouldn't
to
either,
have
but
in my.
I think our world would be better if they did. I just say, I wouldn't want to be there for it.
I'm just saying, but I get you.
So I thought, okay, I know 10 people in New York. If I say, hey, would you be willing to come over to Brooklyn, sit down in the tub with me and have a conversation about life and aging and future? I knew about 10 people would be like, yeah, sure, no problem. No questions asked. And I thought, okay, so I'm just going to do this as an experiment. And then what happened was more and more people started seeing the shows, reaching out, wanting to be part of it. I was getting more people contacting me. I was getting more people saying yes and really saying, wow, it became for me really an exercise of an antidote to the nightly news, because every single episode, and there's about 185 of them now, every single episode is someone who is working so hard to make our world a happier and healthier place in some way. And it re-inspires my faith and my joy in humanity to see so many people who are thinking in a way that's about what can we do based on this moment in history, where we're at, what we're dealing with, the cards we've been dealt. What can we do with this? And how can we resist or fight back or act up or teach or celebrate that's still meaningful given the circumstances and the times and the trauma that we're living through? So it really became like something I wasn't anticipating, but it became something so inspirational for me. And I also told you, Mattie, like, I don't think I had the confidence to do this before I turned 50. I don't think I had the personal and professional confidence as a therapist to do something like this, which is kind of frowned upon in the therapy community, to be honest with you. Even in
Hmm.
liberal New York, it's still not something therapists think is a good idea. But I was like, I don't care. I got zero fucks left to give. I'm over 50 and I'm living my life truly. And I'm just going to shine and celebrate that to the best of my ability without getting too censored on YouTube too often.
Yeah, I feel the same way about 40. I'm coming into 40 this year and I'm like, fuck you. I'm here. I'm queer. I love myself. And guess what? Get up because I'm ready to sit down. I'm old enough to say that shit now. So yeah, I feel you 100%. I think it's a beautiful thing. Like I said, I did watch a couple of the episodes and I was just in awe because it takes me back. It reminds me a little bit of on the Late Show when they did the car karaoke and he was interviewing that way. I love seeing people get in areas where they lose their inhibition. So seeing y'all in the tub, especially when you did the advisor from Obama's administration, I can't remember the guy's name, but like how he just got so comfortable and just talked. I love it. I love it. I love the concept.
Yes, that was Greg Millett, and he is a personal hero to me. And yes, his ability, because I see him at conferences a lot, and he's great. He's a great speaker, but he's very suit and tie. And when he agreed to do this with me, it was just like, wow, you're really going to do this? He's like, yeah, I'm really going to do this. So please watch that episode with Greg Millett on Tub Talks. Yeah.
So, when I was doing sex work, I had one question that I loved to ask every single client. Do you have one question that you love to ask guests?
Well, the one question I do ask every guest is, what do you like most about your body? And I've learned that I have to ask that in advance, because if I don't ask people that in advance, it throws them off, especially gay men. Like, we are so accustomed to thinking about what we perceive to be faulty or not good or unattractive or unbeautiful about our bodies. And in the queer community, we resuscitate and recycle and bounce that off each other all the time. So this exercise for me was really getting the conversation started. It's the first question I ask every guest is getting that conversation started on a different set of track. What do we like about our bodies? What do we celebrate about our bodies? These are God, amazing, resilient vehicles we've been given. And for a lot of us, we put them through a fair amount of abuse and they still work. Let's celebrate that. And let's see what happens in this conversation of activism and sexual health and joy when we start with the foundation of loving the vehicles we're driving at this time.
That's so beautiful. And my deep hope is also that everyone listening right now is off on a little thought train about their favorite part about their bodies.
I hope so. I mean, again, I've been very comfortable with nudity for most of my life privately. And I just think that the human body itself, all human bodies are so beautiful. They're just so beautiful. And again, you think about the abuse we put them through. The human body is incredibly resilient. It is incredibly gorgeous. Now, that doesn't mean that everyone is erotically drawn to every body, but just to be able to stand there and recognize the fundamental magnificence of the skin, of these capillaries, of these arteries, of all the things that get us through from one place to the other, it is profound for me. And I celebrate that in the tub.
That is absolutely beautiful. Thank you for that. Thank you for offering that.
Uh,
And so we'd like to shift now and ask you a couple surprise questions that
Mhm.
are a little less groundbreaking.
okay.
So, are you ready to take the plunge?
I'm ready.
What are the 5 P's of sexual health according to you?
Proactive, pleasure, protection. I'm going to say penetration, but that's not a requirement for me, but it's certainly a source.
Hey.
And pizza. Because what's better than pizza? Pizza's
My mind went somewhere totally different when you said that, but okay. All I could think about was never mind, we ain't going there.
It
Anyway,
wasn't what you thought it was going to be, was it?
no, it wasn't. It took me back to, I'll never forget, Lord, I'm sorry for this, but we and my cousin back in the day snuck into my uncle's room and watched one of his porns, and the woman was eating KFC fried chicken while having sex. That's the image it took me back to, was eating pizza and getting it at the same time. But since we're talking about sex always, do you prefer spontaneous sex or planned sex?
Well, because I prefer bottoming, it's not really going to be spontaneous. Rarely is that ever going to be spontaneous. Now, within the plan, there can be spontaneity. There can be intention and still be spontaneous, such as if it's a hookup or a party or a club or something that wasn't necessarily planned. I do a lot of planning to the letter in my life, so it's sometimes nice not to be so planned. But I also know if I'm going to do what I really want to do with the maximal amount of pleasure, there's got to be some planning involved because I don't want to shit on people.
Hello. Sorry.
Good goal.
Yeah, got a little hair.
Unless they're into that.
Unless they prefer that. And then I still have my own issues and obstacles to get over, but you're right. Yeah.
Fair. And I feel like this is a good transition for the next question. What is your biggest stupid fear?
Ooh. I don't know if it's, gosh. I guess oh my gosh. I don't know. Because I don't think I think I can be irrational. I don't think it's stupid. What is my irrational fear is now I am in my 50s and my penis doesn't work exactly the way it used to. And that not being able to get an erection or keep an erection is going to be a major deal breaker or a turnoff for other people. And it's really not for most people, especially since I'm not really advertising as a top to begin with. But I'd say that's an irrational fear. But, men and control. We want to think we have control. We want to think we control the world. We don't. We want to think we control our erections. We don't. And I'd say, but that I'm a male who has those fears sometimes. What if that's a turnoff or what if that's a deal breaker or a situation where I feel embarrassed?
Yeah, but I got a feeling you'll make it and turn it around to being a positive in the first place. Like you said, because that's not really what you advertise. So it'd be like, oh, well, one's down, one's up. Hey, let's go.
You'll have some other things going on that can still bring a lot of pleasure to the table.
Right. I'm just saying. So if you have sex with one celebrity, and don't take my celebrity, I can't tell you who it is, but I know who it is. Who would it be? Who would you sleep with?
Who would I sleep with or who would I have sex with?
Sex. I'm sorry, because sleeping don't always mean sex. I'm old school, so my bad. I still say we're gonna sleep together, meaning we're gonna fuck later. But it is what it is.
Donald Glover without the manscaping.
Mm.
Donald Glover without the chest shaving when he's in his pure hairy state. Yeah, he's
I love it. And I
gorgeous
told
and
you not to
creative.
pick mine. Why did you
Yeah.
take mine? Damon,
It was
I
a
told you. This is America over here. I need you to understand that when he made this on Redbone, it was me he was talking about. I need you to go on about your business.
That video, it's like that's everything right there. Minus the guns. But everything else is like, wow. Yeah. Donald Glover would be my go-to. But I'm not so much a sleep person.
Excellent
Mhm.
choice. So, what is the kink that brings you joy?
I don't think I have a kink. I don't know if it's a kink. There is something, I think, very meaningful and very powerful and very spiritual about having another man's seed inside me and having different men inside me at the same time, like different inside me at the same time. I do think there's a very spiritual component to that. I think in our natural form, we are all basically just one source of light and energy. And while we're in human bodies, we look separate. And the closest we can get to our natural form is through that exchange of semen. That's just in my own fantasy. That's in my own head. That takes me there in a lot of ways. So I don't think it's a kink, or I don't know if it is a kink. Maybe for some it is, maybe it doesn't. It feels good to me by any other name. Doesn't really matter. But that is something that I have enjoyed, especially in the context of what we talked about earlier, where semen was tantamount to death and dying. And to be able to live long enough and have the science now to be able to enjoy that without any fear, to prevent that and have full control of HIV and STIs and really have that experience has been like amazing, phenomenal.
So I mean, real quick, Damon, when we talk about the queer movement and we talk about Power Beyond Pride, what does Power Beyond Pride to you encompass? What does that mean?
Power Beyond Pride to me means integrity. I think, and what I mean by that is when we have a sense of integrity, when we are acting in a way in accordance with our priorities, our values, when we say what we mean, what we say, and we act with consistency in that, then I think that is a very deeply empowering experience. It is empowering politically, it is empowering personally, and I think it's a generally healthy way to be. I'm not against pride. I'm not against anything that brings people joy, but I do wish within the movement, within the community, whatever that means, whatever the community is that we had a little bit of an inventory of values. If you say you care about the world, but you treat everybody in your world like shit, or you're abusive or terrible to people, or say things or do things to hurt other people when you say you care about the world, that's a disconnect. That's a problem.
Yep.
And I see that a lot. So I would think that I would really like to see Beyond Pride is a sense of integrity, values, and clarity within that. And I can't tell anyone what's right or wrong. I can't, again, I'm not shooting anybody to say what their values should be. I'm saying have
Right.
value. And if you say one thing, don't contradict it with your action.
Makes sense.
Yeah. And
And-
you have offered us so many little nuggets to dive deeper in and things to unpack and questions to ask ourselves. Where can people learn more about you and really follow your work?
Well, I'd say tubtalkswithdamon.com. You can see my interview there with one of the producers of the show. And soon you'll be able to see my interview with Mattie whenever we do that. But there's 180 plus interviews there with people thinking about purpose, pleasure, and protection in all the ways we've been talking about. DamonLJacobs.com is my main website. That's sort of the funnel where you can see a lot of these things. But don't forget the L. It's Damon L. Jacobs, because Damon Jacobs without the L is another person who I'd rather not be associated with. Don't Google that. It's a whole nother story. So I guess those would be the two ways. DamonLJacobs.com or tubtalkswithdamon.com would be the easiest way. Oh, and I do Instagram, but I kind of forget to do it sometimes. But Instagram and Blue Sky, Damon L. Jacobs.
All right, Damon. So everybody remember, put the L in there. Damon L. Jacobs on everything. Just leave the L in there. Well, Damon, I do want to say thank you again for coming and sitting with us tonight. I am so ready. I am getting my bleach and my Lysol so I can come clean the tub, so I can come get in it. I'm ready to get naked. Let's talk. Serious. I love it. I love the concept so much. I love it. Love it.
Thank you, Mattie. Thank you, Kate. Thank you so much. I really love this conversation.
Anytime. And yes, my name is Mattie. I am your co-host for the Mostest tonight, and I'm sitting here with the beautiful Katie.
Hello, and I am your co-host, Kate, and you can find me at Harm Reduction Femmes on Instagram. Remember to subscribe and get your friends to subscribe to Power Beyond Pride on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. And check out our site at powerbeyondpride.com.
And Kate, I forgot to give my social media handles. On Instagram is Mattie Simone 737. Facebook is Mattie Bynum, and I don't have Blue Sky. And I just started TikToking, so that's Mattie Bynum as well. So you can check me out there. And Power Beyond Pride is a project from Great Idea. It's a queer-owned design and content agency. Learn more about them at greatidea.com.
This episode is produced by Shane Lucas. Mita Sarkar is our project developer. Our editor is Jarrett Redding with support from Ian Wilson.
We are both part of the podcast Awesome Host team, and we invite you to send your questions and comments at powerbeyondpride.com.
Check out our new episodes each week, and we look forward to queer change making with you next time. Thank you from all of us at Power Beyond Pride.